It was just announced that Nebraska has fired first-year defensive coordinator John Butler, and ever since then, everybody has been asking, who are the Huskers going to hire to replace him? So in today's video, we're going to go over 5 huge candidates to be Nebraska's next defensive coordinator, who these guys are, what they bring to the table, their pros, their cons. Will the Huskers actually hire them? A couple other honorable mentions we need to have our eyes out for, a couple other rumored coaches who Nebraska definitely won't hire, and everything else you need to know. So really quick, this is a loaded update talking about our future DC. Hit that like button if you're fired up. And also, we are 50 subscribers away from 15,000. Let's hit it today. Folks, the content is just speeding up, talking the coaching carousel, talking recruiting, talking the transfer portal. If you want to stay in tune with the Huskers this offseason, it's no brainer. Take 2 seconds, join the family. Hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much. But without further ado, we have a lot to talk about. It was just announced that Nebraska has fired first-year defensive coordinator John Butler, and ever since then, everybody has been asking, who are the Huskers going to hire to replace him? And I want to make this very clear. Whoever Matt Rhule hires, it will be by far the most important decision of his career here in Nebraska. And it's not even close, because we are entering a crucial year 4 that will make or break Matt Rhule. If you have a successful hire, it can lead you to break out, to win 9 games, 10 games, to potentially make the college football playoffs. But if you select a bad defensive coordinator, a bad hire, it could lead us to potentially miss a bowl game with our tough schedule. And that not only will lead to the demise of our new DC, it will likely lead to the demise of Matt Rhule. So again, they're going to treat this hire very seriously. It's likely going to take 2, 3, maybe even 4 weeks. They're going to hire upwards of 20 to 30 candidates, and they're going to make sure they do this right to get the best defensive coordinator money can buy. So before we talk about the 5 candidates, I want to talk about the 7 characteristics that we need to look for in our future defensive coordinator. These are non-negotiables. Number 1, we need to find a defensive coordinator who has strong experience. Okay, that goes without saying. And for some reason, our last defensive coordinator, John Butler, he had no experience. He only had 1 year in his past of being a defensive coordinator at Penn State, and he was not very good, and he got fired. Okay, we need a defensive coordinator who, at the very minimum, has been that way for over 10 years, likely over 20 years. In the Big Ten, in the SEC, in all of college football, maybe even in the NFL. We need somebody with a proven track record of success. Number 2, we need somebody who's a great recruiter. Okay, recruiting wins, especially in modern day college football. You need somebody who's a great recruiter, not only in high school, but in the transfer portal. And that's something that John Butler did not bring to the table. We need somebody who's energetic, right? Who's innovative. That's number 3. Who's always trying to improve himself, who's not complacent. Number 4, I want an up-and-coming head coach. And I know a lot of people, they want to find a Phil Parker, somebody who's 60 years old, 70 years old, who's been, a defensive coordinator for a million years. That's awesome. But sometimes those guys are complacent, right? Even like a Dana Holgorsen, you could argue he's complacent because he's not going to be a head coach ever again. I want somebody who aspires to be a head coach because they're always going to bring their A game. That was the Nick Saban philosophy. He always hired the up-and-comers, right? The up-and-comer coordinators. And then when they inevitably left, he just hired another one. And they always found success. Okay, you get the up-and-comers, not the complacent guys who are at the end of their career. Number 5, I want somebody who runs a 4-2-5 defense. It could even be a 4-3, but in modern day college football, you need probably a 4-2-5. Again, with the way this is going, with these spread offenses, 4-3 is a little bit outdated. Most universities now run 4-2-5s. Again, get the 3-3-5 out of the window. That did not work in the Big Ten. I don't think it ever will, even if we have good personnel. Number 6, you need somebody who ideally is not coming off of being fired, at least not fired as a defensive coordinator, maybe fired as a head coach, but not as a defense coordinator. And number 7, ideally they have a background of coaching the defensive line. I mean, that's not a huge non-negotiable, right? But ideally they have a track record of good defensive line play and potentially were a defensive line coach in their past. All right. With that being said, let's dive into the 5 candidates I have my eyes out for Nebraska to hire. Let's get things started with by far the biggest name who's going to cost some top dollar, but this is Leonhard coming out of the Denver Broncos. We know him because he was with the Wisconsin Badgers as their defensive coordinator from 2017 to 2022, now with the Broncos as an assistant head coach and a passing game coordinator. When he was with Wisconsin, he was top 5 in total defense several times, along with top 10 in scoring defense 4 times. Over that span with Wisconsin, they were first in total yards allowed, first in pass efficiency defense, third in running defense, and first in opponent's third down conversion. So this is somebody who has a proven track record. He is super young. He's only 43 years old. He definitely has his best days of coaching ahead of him. He's incredibly innovative. He's a great recruiter. Everybody who's played for Jim Leonhard vouches for him. That's why ever since Wisconsin got rid of him, everybody's been calling for him to come back because, again, there's not a single person who does not like Jim Leonhard. He's such an infectious person to be around, and the recruits really gravitate toward him. And he also runs a 3-4 hybrid defense, but he also runs a little bit of a 4-2-5 as well. As somebody who is incredibly innovative, great blitz concepts, has a proven track record with a great defensive line, great secondary, done it before in the Big Ten, which is very important. and somebody who, again, will cost top dollar, but will be worth every single penny. However, here are the cons. There's always pros, but there's always cons, right? There's never really a perfect hire anymore. The only cons with Jim Leonhard, number one, who says he wants to go back to college. He has a very good gig right now with the Broncos as their assistant head coach. He also is raising a family over there in Colorado. He said multiple times that he doesn't really want to move. He would move for the right, opportunity, but who says, again, that's really right now for him. Okay, he's turned down multiple opportunities at better schools to stay with Denver. And also, Nebraska's not the only school who wants him. He's going to get calls every single year from schools that are better than Nebraska, in the SEC, in the Big Ten. So if he's turning down those other schools, who's to say he's going to say, okay, I'm going to go to Nebraska? We know one thing, money talks. Money talks. But Jim Leonhard, that would be absolutely a slam dunk hire, the best hire Nebraska can make. Proven track record in the Big Ten, great recruiter, somebody who has physical defenses and has his best days of coaching ahead of him. Second, candidate for Nebraska, who was just fired as the head coach of Cal. This is Justin Wilcox. Now, right off the bat, as the head coach of Cal, he's been there since 2017. He went 48-55, but before then, he was the defensive coordinator at Tennessee, Washington, USC, and Wisconsin, and most notably at Wisconsin, he was there in 2016. Jim Leonhard was actually the one who replaced him. He had one of the best defenses in America. They were fourth nationally in scoring defense, only averaging around 16 points given up per game. One of the best rushing defense in America, only gave 100 rushing yards per game. And again, he led them to an 11-3 season. So somebody who has been a great defensive coordinator in his past, flamed out a little bit at Cal, which is not a great thing, but he's experienced with great secondaries, great linebacker play. He's still an upper-comer head coach. He's only 49 years old. He likely wants to be a head coach again. I think he will be a head coach again. He just wasn't really dealt a very good hand over there with Cal. Again, he's delivered really, really good defensive performances despite not really having too great talent over there at Cal or even at Wisconsin, you could argue. And he also runs a 2-4-5 defense, which is very innovative, very different. But again, likely if you were to be hired by Nebraska, it'd probably be a 4-2-5. But again, just know this is kind of how defensive coordinators operate nowadays. It's all about the secondary. You need 5 players in the secondary. There's really very few sets nowadays that don't have 5. You need 5. You need 2 corners, 2 safeties, and a nickel. That's just kind of how it works. You don't really see, again, only 4 players in the secondary anymore like it used to be. The only cons with Justin Wilcox, I'd say, number 1, not a great recruiter. Number 2, he hasn't been a defensive coordinator in about a decade. And number 3, he flamed out, right? I don't really want to hire guys who are coming off being fired, right? Especially kind of in his fashion. But still, I mean, the track record speaks for itself, and he will definitely be one of the hottest defensive coordinator guys on the market. Third option for Nebraska is Jim Knowles, one of the best defensive coordinators in America and also has some of the most experience in America. Now, he's currently with Penn State, but we know he's probably not going to be with Penn State after this season with them getting rid of James Franklin. We know that before he was at Penn State, he was at Ohio State for 3 seasons, led them to a national championship. Before then, he was the defensive coordinator at Oklahoma State, also at Duke. But I want to go back to that national championship season at Ohio State. They had the number 1 defense in America. They only gave up 200 yards per game. The second best defense wasn't even close. They gave up 250 yards per game. So again, the Ohio State defense not only was the best in that season, it was one of the best of all time thanks to Jim Knowles. And while they still have a good defense this year, it's not even close to what it was last year, right? Jim Knowles, and then they were very mad when he left because, again, he's worth every single penny. He's great when it comes to the defensive line. He's a great developer, great blitz concepts, incredibly innovative. And the best part about Jim Knowles, and this is something that Nebraska's defense has lacked, he's aggressive. He's not afraid to dial the blitz. At times in Nebraska, we're way too conservative. We need an aggressive defensive coordinator who's not only just reckless, but aggressive and calculated. And Jim Knowles just beat Nebraska badly when we played him just a couple weeks ago. So again, he's a top defensive line recruiter, top defensive line developer. He knows how to scheme up a secondary as well. Somebody with a lot of experience, over about 35 years of experience, and somebody who would get, we have to pay him top dollar, no question about it. But man, that would be a home run for Nebraska, despite him potentially never being a head coach again. He's okay with being a defensive coordinator, but again, the results speak for themselves. He's still at the top of his game. And by the way, he runs a 4-2-5. Then, an underrated name who I'm honestly surprised nobody's brought up is Joe Rossi. Now, this should be a familiar name to Nebraska fans. He's currently with Michigan State as a defensive coordinator. Previous to that, he was at Minnesota from 2019 to 2023 as their DC. One of the best defensive coordinators in America. He was nominated for the Broyles Award a million times. He was also experienced with special teams and DBs in the past. He's only 46 years old. So I actually really like Joe Rossi. I mean, at Minnesota, he was lights out. He was absolutely lights out. There were 3 times in 5 seasons where the defense finished among the top 10 in America. That was 2019, 2021, and 2022. Over his tenure at Minnesota, he coached many players who became NFL draft picks over 8, along with a bunch of All-Americans. People have won all Big Ten awards. So he's somebody who knows that scheme of a secondary specifically, but they've also had very physical defenses over there, particularly at Minnesota. Now, when he went over to Michigan State, it wasn't necessarily the same result. I mean, they actually had a decent defense last year in 2023. It was about top 40 in America. But again, this year it completely fell apart. But that wasn't really his fault. That was kind of more so Jonathan Smith's fault, who's no longer with that program, got fired. So Joe Rossi is somebody who, despite their defense not being great this year, the track record speaks for itself. Again, he was lights out Minnesota. He was phenomenal. He has never lost to Nebraska at Minnesota. He was undefeated from 2019 to 2023 at Minnesota. And that's thanks to him. That's not thanks to the offense, it's thanks to him. And again, super young. He runs a 4.3. So all the people who want a 4.3, this is your guy. This is your guy. And he's also a really good recruiter, and everybody rallies around him. So I'd say the only cons around Joe Rossi, again, blew up this year, right? It's not very good this year, and limited experience as being a defensive coordinator before Minnesota. He's only been in DC for about 7 seasons. So not, 20 plus years, right? Like maybe some people want. And then the last legit candidate that we need to talk about, and maybe some people won't like this, is Nebraska secondary coach Addison Williams. Now, I want to make this very clear. In 2024, Nebraska had one of the worst secondaries in the Big Ten. It ranked 64th nationally. Addison Williams was hired. He came in. He developed guys like Celia Wright, Deshaun Singleton, and they went from the 64th best in America last season to the 3rd best in America. Now, you could argue that's because of John Butler, but if you talk to these players in the secondary, they don't say it's because of John Butler. They say it's because of Addison Williams, because John Butler was on this coaching staff last year, and it was not very good. The only difference was Addison Williams was here. So we're talking about a guy who's brought the best out of his secondary, and you better believe if Nebraska doesn't hire him to be their DC, other schools will want to. Okay, he's going to get DC offers. He's going to get other secondary coach offers. So he's somebody who definitely knows how to develop, again, the secondary. He also has experience as being a defensive coordinator at UCF for 2 seasons. In 2023, they had the #1 defense in the Big 12. They only gave up around 200 passing yards per game, which was, again, #1 in that conference. They ranked 3rd in the Big 12 in pass efficiency defense, and they only gave up 12 opponent touchdown passes. So, again, just a track record of phenomenal pass defense. Now, granted, doesn't really have a track record of, again, the defensive line, the blitzes, right, the sacks. I know a lot of people want that. That's granted, right? That is a con. But if we're talking about elite secondary play, he's about second to none, and he's an up-and-comer coach, and he's only 38 years old. He's the youngest guy in this list, and we know that Matt Rhule likes to promote from within. He likes to have guys, hire them as secondary coaches, and promote them. So the very minimum, Addison Williams is going to get an interview. He very much will. And again, I think Addison Williams, if he's not hired here, he might leave, because again, he will get this job somewhere else. Might not be at a program as good as Nebraska, but he's going to get some interest to be a DC with his track record. He's been it before, and he wants to be one again. Also, the only cons around him, again, limited experience, only been a DC for 2 years. Inconsistency, right? And then I'd say just not D-line focus. We're looking for somebody who has a track record of, again, production on the D-line. All right, those are 5 legit candidates to be Nebraska's next defensive coordinator. Now, let's talk about a couple other honorable mentions, some guys who I could see Nebraska hire. And then we need to talk about some names we're being floated around right now who have a 0% chance to be hired, because there's a lot of them. Number 1, a couple other real options. Elijah Robinson's a very real option. He's the current defensive coordinator at Syracuse. He was with Matt Rhule at both Baylor and Temple. That's one of the best defensive line coaches in America. He won a million awards when he was at Texas A&M. Now, granted, so far at Syracuse has not been very good. One of the worst defenses in America. But again, the D-line really hasn't been the problem over there. It's been the secondary. But again, if you go to this defensive line back there at Texas A&M, it was unbelievable. And he's a great recruiter, super young, about 40 years old. And again, he's getting some top-tier talent over there at Syracuse. He's going to figure out the X's and O's. I think he's so young. He's so young, the best is yet to come for Elijah Robinson. So I do believe he'll get an interview. Brent Pry, who just got fired from Virginia Tech, he will definitely get an interview, or Nebraska will have some interest there, right? One of the best DCs before he went over there, had some experience at Penn State. Jeff Collins is a little bit interesting. There were some rumors around him last time we did this last year. Again, he was the former coach at Georgia Tech, and now with South Carolina as an assistant. But again, I expect Nebraska to get involved. There has some connections to Matt Rhule. Scott Simmons is the current defensive coordinator at SMU, one of the biggest names in the market. That one's going to be really hard. Like, that's a top dollar hire. I mean, you got to pay him some significant money. And that's really what I want. I want Nebraska to go poach somebody who's already a great defensive coordinator elsewhere, at SMU, at Clemson, somewhere else, and say, we're going to pay you $3 million and basically force you to say no. Because again, Scott Simmons, he's a stud, man. And also DJ Durkin, another guy to watch out for there, who I think is a very legit candidate, but just not worthy like going over everything because I don't know how realistic he truly is. Now rolling over the options who are not realistic, and I want to make this very clear, these are not happening. Okay, so tell people who are asking about these guys, I get 0% chance. Okay, Mark Stoops, number one, 0% chance. Okay, you could argue Mark Stoops might be done with coaching after being fired from Kentucky. He's been there for a very long time. He says he wants to be a defensive coordinator again. And honestly, I don't even think that'd be a very good hire. I don't think that'd be a good hire. When you're a head coach for that long, you need some time. You need some time before you get back on coaching. Usually those guys take gap years, 1-2 years, and they get back into it. And I think that's going to happen with Mark Stoops, or he might just retire. And I wouldn't blame him because he's been at Kentucky for so long. I heard Ed Orgeron. That's not happening. Vance Joseph, that's not happening. Bill Bush, that's not happening. Along with any other former Husker. I've seen Jason Peter, Grant Wistrom. I've seen Carl Pliny. Like any person who either graduated from Nebraska, was a former Nebraska coach, no. Okay, and that's one of my things. Do not hire somebody who's from Nebraska. Don't hire somebody who's Nebraska connections. This needs to be a purely an outside hire. Okay, and this needs to be. I'm not saying disqualify everybody who's from the state of Nebraska, but don't even, that shouldn't be a reason why you even give them an interview. Give them an interview based on their merit and merit alone. Okay, we need this to be a top dollar hire. So no, that's not happening. Okay, we're not hiring anybody with Nebraska, anybody, somebody who's just not experienced. Also, in that same note, Ndamukong Suh will not be hired here. Okay, he doesn't even want to be a coach anyway. So again, he's not going to be our defensive coordinator. And also Ryan Walters, I think that'd be a really good hire. But he's currently at Washington. He's killing it right now, and he does not like Nebraska. He's a Buffalo. He graduated from Colorado. So I mean, I'd be in favor of that hire, right? I just don't think it's too realistic. Sorry guys, those are the 5 who I'm eyes out for. Let me know your thoughts down below. It'll be a crazy process to follow. It'll be about 2-3 weeks. I think they'll get it done around the bowl game, and then he'll get a staff, and we might have some more changes. You never know. All right, guys, let me know your thoughts down below. Who do you want to hire? Let me know in the comment section. Hey, if you made this far, hit that like button and subscribe. As always, folks, go Mike Roll, and I'll see you in the next one.